Hello everyone. Today we've prepared a video for you for your final reflection. It's quite a long, lengthy video, approximately 15 minutes. So we would recommend that you grab the text that accompanies it from the Bucky Lab blogspot or the manual. Have fun watching. Hello. Today I would like to talk to you guys about your final reflection. So your final reflection is actually made up of two parts. The first part is the group reflection, and the second part is the individual reflection. We will talk a little bit more about the individual reflection at the end of this video, but we would like to start with the group reflection. This makes up quite a significant part of your mark. So this is where you show us you understood the assignment, its context, and then also your work inside of it. And before you write it, please start by looking up what the original design brief was, and then evaluate if your product idea is a valuable answer to that original design brief. Because all of you started with a promising idea, which had a lot of potential, but the only way to figure out if that is the correct assumption, if it's a good idea, the only way to figure that out is to start researching, to become an expert on the technical feasibility of your original idea. That's what you've tested in the last months in the Bucky Lab. So this is also the perfect time, after having spent all that time, after becoming the expert, this is the perfect time to see if it was actually a good idea and to honestly reflect back on it. Because in the Bucky Lab, you're not only judged based on the quality of your engineering solutions throughout the whole process, or how well you structured that process, but also the ability to honestly reflect on your own product. And this is the moment to do so. Because the quality of your engineering solutions we can observe, of course, during tutoring, and we can also find that in your report. But the reflection back on the process and the product, that's something we evaluate in your own evaluation, in your reflection. So let's start with the product evaluation. How would you look back on your product? First of all, let me mention that the tips that we give now are not set in stone. So we do leave room for your own interpretations of your own approach. But if you would like some tips and pointers on where to start or what you could incorporate, please have a look at this list. We think the perfect starting point is actually looking back at your original design vision and design criteria. So these were formulated at a moment in time where you didn't know anything yet about the technical feasibility. And then you started researching and maybe stuff changed. So your original design criteria, were they the correct ones? Was the order of the priority, what you prioritized in the beginning, was it correct? Did you maybe miss essential criteria that you found out during the process that turned out to be essential to your design? And all of this is like a first warm-up exercise to look back on the original idea that you had and see if the criteria are still valid and correct. And you can also deliver us a list of changes. So these were what we started with, and these are what we ended up with. And of course, the argumentation why that happened. Then, to judge your own product's potential, we would like you to answer the following key considerations. And if applicable, it might be nice to also directly, at the end of each topic, to answer the question, what would be topics that need further research, which you couldn't fully answer, for example, or what would you change if you'd had more time? So this will be the second point that you start with, following the design criteria and design vision. So second, we would like you to check if the product solves a real user's needs. Is there a clear value proposition to its user? So the final, client or the final user of your product, is it clear to him what the product does, how he needs to use it, and if it's of added value to him? This is a nice second warm-up exercise. Then, thirdly, we would like you to check how complex your idea is by seeing if you can summarize your idea into a Twitter post that if you show it to your grandma, she would actually understand it. Is your product perhaps overly complex? And if so, could it be simplified? There's not really such a thing as an oversimplified product. Often, simplicity is best. That's at least what we find in the Bucky Lab. So is it just right, or would you improve? Then, fourth, how well does your product score on technical feasibility? So can it be built with current technology and manufacturing techniques? If you were given 1 more year and 200 grand, what would be the next step in discovering its technical feasibility? What would you change? What would you add? What would you have really liked to research within the Bucky Lab and you were not able to because we didn't have the material or you didn't have the time? This is your moment to really show us that you understand what the next steps in the process are. Then, fifth point is, how does your idea differentiate from existing solutions? So let's say you designed an improved umbrella. Then, of course, at the end, you need to check if your design is actually better than the current umbrella solutions. How does your product score? Is there a unique selling point? And is there a competitive advantage to your product? And we would really like it if you could be, if you as a group can encourage each other to be honest here. So for us, it doesn't really matter if your product is not yet up to par with existing solutions. Maybe it's not yet such a good idea, but with a couple of tweaks, it could be, or maybe it could never be. Maybe the conclusion after the Bucky Lab, after spending all the time, is we researched everything, the umbrella cannot be improved, we would spend our time with something else, for example. A valid conclusion. And we judge you based on how honest you can be in this evaluation and how well structured and how well argumented your evaluation is. Then, sixth point, and I think personally this is quite an important point. Oftentimes this is something you guys have already thought of during the design process, or at least I would have probably already pointed you to this direction. How well does your product score on sustainability? And that is not only to do with its impact during its production, but also what is its impact during its life cycle and at the end of its life cycle. And that has to do with sustainable materials, but it also has to do with how materials can be repurposed. And that has to do with how modular your detailing is, for example. So please give us some insights in, was this a design criteria? Was this something that was omitted in the design process because it made stuff too complicated? And if so, would you see any interesting research if you were to go on with researching this project? And then, finally, and this is something that we would like you guys to reflect on, is your product visually appealing? What is the aesthetic value of your product? So, is it well designed? Did aesthetics play a role in the design process? Would you change anything, looking back on how it looks at the moment? So if it's too bulky, for example, would you slim it down? And if so, what would be design directions? Because aesthetics does play quite a large part in if users would like to use it. So if something is well designed, aesthetically appealing, oftentimes it's better used. So that's it with regards to what we ask of you for the product evaluation. Again, if you have other points that you would like to add, or if something is not as relevant to your product, please leave them out or add them as far as you see fit. But we would like you guys to look back on the product in a bit of a structured way. And these points can help you do that. All right, so that's it for the product. Then we go on to the process. And I think this is something we probably mentioned to you in the Bucky Lab before, is that the design process is as important, if not more important, than the technical aspect and the product aspect of the Bucky Lab. Because if you can get successfully from a design brief to a well-researched product and an answer to the question, is the original idea a good idea? If that's a question you can answer via a very well-structured research approach where you didn't get stuck, where you got from A to B in quite a structured way, that gives you quite a lot of pointers for yourself in the future. So that means you go into graduation with more of a feeling of that you have a plan and that you know how to get from A to B. And even after you graduate, if you start working for an architecture firm or an engineering firm, that's quite a nice skill to have. So having said that, we would like you guys to reflect on the process with the help of, I think, 5 topics in total. Yeah. So, first topic. We would like you guys to be able to reflect back on your process. First, sketch out how did that design process look like. So how many iterations of ideas, brainstorming, research, perhaps desk research, prototyping, testing, evaluating and implementing this circle of iteration. How many times did you actually walk through this circle? And if you like, you can also subdivide these in your product components. So for example, if you divided the work on construction, skin, detailing, it can also be that you subdivide and say, well, this is the amount of rounds that we had for construction, but we would have liked to have one more round to really make a decision based on A, B, or C, for example. So this brings into a frame what you've done so far, and that makes it a little bit more easily to evaluate the process. So if you've done that, that's step 1. Then the second step would be to analyze the effectiveness of the process. So what worked well in the design process? What did not work well at all? How was the group dynamic? Did that play a role in when you got stuck, for example? How did you get out of very difficult situations? Were there any bottlenecks or areas where your process could be improved? And it might be actually nice to see in your group dynamic who played what role. So was there one project leader? Was there one who loved to dive into all of the deep research? Was there one person always grabbing a coffee saying, let's go, to motivate the group? Because that can also play quite a large role in how your group functions and how design decisions are made. So it might be nice to reflect a little bit back on that. And then third, use all of that information to reflect on your design decisions. So how were they made? Were they made based on prototyping mostly, testing? Was it desk research? Or maybe were they also based on personal bias or personal preferences or assumptions that you've made that you didn't have the time to really research? Because oftentimes if you make assumptions with not enough argumentation or not enough research behind it, you could be making the wrong design decisions and you end up with not a fully worked out design product. And that's something that Marcel and I can sometimes see. If that has happened in your design process, please reflect back on it, and also how could you prevent it from happening the next time. Then fourth, that has to do with the last point, check if there are areas for improvement. So based on your reflections, what changes would you make to your design process for future projects? And finally, fifth point, summarize your key findings. Reflect what you've learned, and also what are key takeaways. So how would you apply them in future projects? That's it for products and process. The total reflection should be between 1,500, 2,000 words, Marcel?
Not too long, but try to make sure to incorporate these points, if applicable or not.
Yeah.
A little side note, be careful. In the very beginning, we ask you to make a sketch design for 100 ideas. Could be variations or 100 total different ideas. At a certain point, when we move to the group work, we will not ask you anymore if you think this is a good idea. If we ask a lot, there might be something wrong, so therefore consider to redesign and improve it. But at a certain point, we will continue in order to make your idea how good or bad it is to continue in order to gain the other learning goals. So therefore, make sure that you get the most out of your assignment in the beginning. Later on, you can fine-tune and improve on that.
Yes, good add. So this is really the moment to see if it's a good idea and to honestly reflect. So it's mostly that you have the insight to see if something works or doesn't. Right.
And at the very end, if it doesn't work and you know exactly why it didn't work and what the reason was it didn't work, it's also a very good work. One of the best projects we ever had were actually a good proof of test that this was a stupid idea, but we had all the argumentations and the reasons and the details why it didn't work, where in the beginning we all thought would be a great idea. At the very end, it's kind of like myth busting. A no for a researcher can be a positive answer.
Exactly. So, as mentioned before, total reflection should be between 1,500 to 2,000 words, and it will be assessed based on the depth of this reflection, the clarity of writing, and mostly the identification of areas that could be improved in both the product and the design process. Right.
That's it.
That's it.
Bye.
Bye. Wait, so we thought we finished, but we forgot that there was a personal reflection as well. So a little bit about that, can be very small. Your personal reflection is where you tell us something, how you like the course. Could there be stuff in the course that could be improved? This could be that you say to Marcel, we would like you to talk less loud, or that you say to Nadia, stop interfering with us during the Bucky Lab building weeks, we would like to do stuff ourselves, or maybe a compliment for George of having helped you really well in the Bucky Lab building weeks. So this is a part where you can individually reflect on how you found the Bucky Lab, and then either compliment us or give us some feedback so we can improve the course for the students of the next year. Thank you very much, and we are looking forward to reading your reflections. All right, see ya.